So we will start with a little short prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahabhiryam Karavavahi Tejasvina Baditamastu Ma Vidvi Shavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Bolo Satguru Shri Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Bolo Shri Vishnu Devananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Okay, again, welcome to everybody for coming to this session, this satsang webinar, and it will be for about 2 hours. So for me here is evening. I'm in Đà Lạt, Vietnam, and for you is during the day. So today is a Sunday, Easter Sunday. So happy Easter! On this meaningful day that symbolizes renewal, awakening, and eternal life, we are being reminded of our infinite potential, our infinite inner resources, and perfect love, which always wins. So this holiday celebrates the meaning of life, and this is the time for us to remember the beauty and the sacredness of our lives. Swami Shivananda said that the true goal of life is to get back to the source from which we came. Just as rivers flow restlessly till they join the ocean, the earth like water, so too we will be restless here till we become one with the peace in the true self deep within. So in this constant flowing journey of life towards self-realization, there are transitions and challenges that we need to face graciously, taking these as opportunities for growth. So the topic of tonight will be about renewals and choices in time of transition. How to turn adversity to opportunity. So you can see a few keywords there. The keyword renewal, choice, transition, adversity, and opportunity. So we'll be talking about a few points that we will make throughout the talk today. Number one, how life is in constant transition. Number two, how life has a positive direction. Number three, we are struggling, but we are always progressing. The more the struggle, the stronger we become. Number four, that we have a power of choice. We're not victims. In any given circumstances, we'll still have the choice to move forward in life. So we need to exercise our power of choice. Number five, we will talk about the 7 stages of conscious self-transformation. How to do that. How to renew yourself consciously. Number 6, we'll talk about when we have difficulty to choose or to make decision, when we are too afraid to choose. So we would discuss a little bit how mistakes are stepping stone to success. And number 7, we talk about adversity and how adversity is a perception. You can return to your untouched self. You are the master of your destiny. Nobody did this to you. You can learn to become strong and accept the game of life. You and your experience are one. And one sentence that kind of mysterious, but those who know yoga philosophy, you understand. There's no world out there besides you. I mean, you are everything. And number 8, everything is an opportunity for practice. So that's the agenda of today. It's a lot. Are you ready? So the number 1, we talk about how we are in constant transition. Okay. So transition makes us uncomfortable and we don't know. So we need to understand the meaning of life. Swami Shivananda say that life is a journey. There's a direction to life. We are always in transition between stages of life. And there is a lesson to be learned at every step. So what we're trying to do is not to get lost in the appearances and the illusions of life. Our destination is to realize our inner peace that always has been here. So different times of transition. Okay, so now you try to see yourself, in these different times of transition. And sometimes just by locating ourselves and realize where we are, we accept our situation better. So the number 1, for yogis, you understand that there are many lifetimes. So we are also in transition, lifetime to lifetime. This life is only a chapter of your book of your life. It's not everything. So you need to step back from your life and recognize the theme of this life. It will be helpful. And the other transition is you are in transition between stages of life. So according to our age and our maturity, we move through the 4 stages of life. We have different duties at each stage. The student stage, householder stage, retirement stage, renunciation stage. Our struggles often reflect the lessons that we need to learn at every stage. We also learn that our psychology and needs evolve with each stage of life. Nowadays, when many people are wondering about their work and their profession and what they're going to do, we need to recognize also that we are in transition between occupations. Our ideal occupation is the one reflecting our inner state of being. From being unconscious with no self-awareness, instinctive living, survival thinking, and living only for enjoyment, to the idea of self-centered self, making the best out of our separate life, to being more responsible of our fellow beings and our actions, and last, to become selfless, understanding our oneness and acting out of the vision of oneness. So we might be in transition from one space, one state of mind to another. And between gunas, according to the theory of yoga, So we move from the place of darkness, yeah, denial. Okay, I slow down for translation. So you can show thumbs up when you finish, when you want me to continue the translation, the talk. Okay. So we can also be in transition, moving from the place of darkness to the place of rajas, or action, to the place of purity and balance and knowledge. Okay, so our journey is a journey of purification, where we unveil ourselves from our veils of ignorance and recognize the light and the knowledge within us. So that's a theory of yoga philosophy, that we are perfect. We are the light within. But sometimes you cannot see it. So we are in transition also between the periods of our karma. And that is not many people really understand. And the inner working of our karma, because we are learning lessons in time, and it follows sequences. According to Vedic astrology, our lives revolve from one karmic expression to another. From one period to another, we have to learn different things. I just summarize. For example, we have to learn self-confidence. Okay, and we have the sun, the period of the sun. We have to learn psychology and emotions, the period of the moon. We have to learn action and energy, the period of Mars. We have to learn intelligence and reasoning, the period of Mercury. We have to learn righteousness and wisdom, the period of Jupiter. We have to learn devotion and enjoyment, the period of Venus. So we have to learn self-discipline and forbearance, Saturn. We have to learn desires and compulsion, Rahu. We have to learn detachment and renunciation, Ketu. So everything is set up by heavenly energies for us to learn. The lesson of enjoyment is 20 years. 20 years. The lesson of self-discipline is 19 years. The lesson about desires is 18 years. Rahu. The lesson of intelligence is 16 years. The lesson of wisdom is 16 years. The lesson about the mind and emotions is 10 years. The lesson about energy and action is 7 years. Of detachment is 7 years. Of the self and confidence and the ego is 6 years. Okay? So that's how things can happen sometimes. And we don't understand, but if we know more or less, you know, what are we supposed to learn, then it's easier. So we are also in transition between seasons and weathers. Okay? Season is revolving, winter, and then spring. In California is now is almost spring. In Canada is still winter. In other places is warm and hot, no spring, summer all the time. So we're learning that the seasons are revolving. Summer, then fall, the leaves, you know, turn yellow, and then winter. So what we are learning is life is cyclical. That means it keeps revolving. We just have to step back and enjoy the seasons changing and revolving. Yeah, you cannot cry when all of a sudden the leaves fell down. Yeah, the winter comes. So the idea is you need to step back and understand the bigger picture. Changes of temperature, weather affect the moods and our health. Okay, so if you keep contemplating about this, then it helps us to accept change. So even during the day, there is a different timing. Yeah, things change. Yeah, morning when the sun rises, evening when sunset, noonday. There's a different quality of time. Yeah, that will determine a certain feeling, a certain result. And also in our life, we think it's always the waking state, but it's not. We're going through, we're revolving between the waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. So whatever that might be a nightmare during the day, yeah, and we sleep, then it's gone. Our daily landscape is revolving between these different states of consciousness. So the idea is we need to learn to become the observer, the witness to all these changing phenomena inside and outside of us. So in fact, we are always transitioning, and we indeed never stay still. We renew ourselves constantly. So according to Swami Shivananda, life is a school in which every sorrow, every pain, every heartbreak brings a precious lesson. The world is your best teacher. There is a lesson in each experience. The world is the best training ground. So we learn to be in the world and be untouched by the world, like the lotus flower growing out of the mud. Okay? So that first idea is that we are constantly in transition. So the second idea is that the journey of life is going in and up and not out and down. What that means there is a direction to life. And that direction is going inward, more inner awareness, and up. That means going, elevating ourselves, growing, and not out and down. So through all the lessons in life, we learn to be more aware and to elevate ourselves. In means inward, toward our peace within. And out means losing ourselves in external concerns. Okay? So our journey is inward. Up means feeling light and content. Down means feeling restless and dissatisfied. So we need to recognize our path and renew ourselves. Swami Shivananda gave very beautiful indication of what is our journey. Okay? So he says, our journey is from impurity to purity. So if something happened and you don't understand, then just understand that it might be this. Yeah? It's a lesson for ourselves to purify ourselves. So we learn to accept our challenges and pains as growing pains. We're cleansing ourselves from our impurities. And we are learning better behavior. So it also is a journey from hatred to cosmic love. Yeah? So we are learning to hate less and to love more every day, then we'll be moving in the right direction. Is the path from death to immortality. So this idea, if we think that we are the mortal body, we'll be gripped by fear of death. But if we are able to move more inward and change our consciousness by going deeper within ourselves, if we learn to meditate, we'll become more detached from the body, and we can feel the freedom and the lightness coming from our eternal spirit. Okay, so it's a big idea, but still, you know, it's a spiritual journey, and we need to follow. And the more that we are doing that, the more we feel somehow more at peace. Even in yoga, when you practice the yoga asanas and you practice savasana, yeah, we completely relax and we're not controlling, and we come out of it renew, refresh, because we learn to detach from the body. So our journey also is a journey from imperfection to perfection. We might be disappointed at ourselves for not being perfect, or judging other people to be less than perfect. But eventually we mature and we know that perfection cannot be attained in this world. We do the best we can in this relative life, and at the same time realize the level of ourselves and of life that is perfect. So we change our angle of vision. So we stop to try to make a better past. I mean, constantly thinking of the past, comparing with the past. And we live in the present more and more, where the perfection can be found. So our journey also is our journey from slavery to freedom. So we might think that we are victims and that we are bound in our lives to do things we do not like. We might have a wrong sense of what is true freedom. Swami Shivananda said that freedom does not mean eating anywhere you like, go anywhere you like, or speaking anything you like. But freedom is found in self-discipline. So we are in fact slave to our desires and senses. Yoga helps to slowly turn our bad habits to positive habits and help us to realize our true inner freedom. So that's our journey. The next is to realize that our journey is from unity to from diversity to unity. So what that means? Yeah, before you might always comparing and see the differences. Then eventually you start to see the unity of the whole of humanity. So the test that we are going through now as a global community bring us closer together. For some, it's create more shift, more kind of separation. But also for some, we realize we are one. So we see more our interdependence. So we open our mind and accept our differences, become less judgmental. So our journey also is a journey from ignorance to eternal wisdom. We're learning more and more to control our mind and emotions and become wise amidst chaos and controversies. We learn to see the bigger picture of our life and learn to avoid to repeat the same mistake and to create new karma. Our journey is a journey from pain to eternal bliss. We learn from our pains and know that we have somehow forgotten ourselves, looking for happiness in the wrong place. So we eventually learn that happiness is within, and the answer lies within. We breathe, we relax, we recognize and forgive ourselves, we reconcile, and others, we reconcile with others eventually in order to be free from our pains. So another point, very important, that we are moving from weakness to infinite strength. So due to our weakness, we have fear, attachment, we create pain for ourselves and others. But life journey teaches us to be stronger and stronger, to face more and more demanding challenge. Everything is a test of our strength and our faith. Okay? So recognize yourself, reconcile with the meaning of life. It helps a lot. The point number 3 is to recognize that we have the power of choice. We need to exercise this power of choice wisely. We need to use our conscious intelligence over our instinct and emotions. So in that journey towards more self-awareness, we exercise our intellect, but oftentimes we are being pulled in the opposite direction by our habitual low mind. We want to learn and to grow, but we are caught in our habits and our attachments. Our emotions pull us to the past and to the future, but resist the guidance of our intellect. We forget ourselves in the past and the future. We are unable to live life fully. We find ourselves unfulfilled and stuck because we want to return to a secure past. And we have difficulty to venture in the unknown. So in that journey, we need help to make changes. So people of high mind who have been there can support us in our journey. Okay? So we talk about the 7 steps of conscious change. There are 7 steps to transform our impressions in our mind. So if we want to transform, we are dealing with our mind that resists or that has some kind of impression that's so deep that we cannot change. So we have to learn how to renew ourselves consciously, how to work with our mind's tendency to repeat itself. When we leave an old pattern for a new one, we enter a transitional ground that can be unsettling. We often resist new patterns for fear of losing identities that we have carefully constructed. It is like a more evolved person of the a more evolved version of the old self. And when we are evolving, it's the same self, but somehow it's more refined. And eventually lead to our true nature. This is the goal. So we keep refining and purifying our mind patterns into healthier designs. And it becomes easier and easier. So the number one stage is you need to set your intention that you're going to be kinder, or you're going to be nicer, or you're going to be more patient, or you're going to be more selfless. So you need to set an intention. The second, you make a commitment to work on an old habit. Yeah, increase the awareness and try to bring the inner light and wisdom. So number three, you need to slow down to observe the mind, allowing greater reflection and insight. You practice yoga, and yoga will help you to slow down. Number four, you need to be aware of unseen force that can hold you captive in the old samskara, the old impression. Okay? So you need to make the intention and then think about it more and then slow down, observe the mind, and then be aware of unseen forces that would pull you back. Number five, you need to strengthen yourself by fearlessness and tolerate the unpleasant sensation in that change. For example, the grief or the fear of loneliness that might pull you back. Number six, we need to envision new pattern. You have to have the visualization of your new self. Maybe when you do your yoga practice, when you slow down, when you relax, you can envision your new self. And number seven, you need to keep practicing. Okay, and understand that you might relapse, but you can go forward again. So we need to know that we are sometimes, and some people more than others, you have difficulty to make decisions. You want to renew yourself, you want to find a better self, and yet you have difficulty to make decisions. Why? Because there's some level of fear, some level of attachment to our old identity. But we need to know that mistakes are stepping stones to success. So don't be afraid. If you make a mistake, it will be painful and you will recognize it. And by thinking about it, you'll be successful next time. So don't be afraid. That's an important quality. And try to be not so rigid. Okay? So we can learn to make our life easier by learning to have faith, to have trust, and to be detached. For a person that is self-aware, there's no such thing as mistake. There's only lesson. Okay? So we are moving very quickly. Are you okay? We continue. So the whole point is to say that our life is constantly moving. We imagine our life in a certain way in our mind, but it's not it. It's constantly changing. We're constantly learning. Actually, sometimes can be very intense lesson, okay? But it's still the same lesson. There's a lesson to go closer to our truth, a lesson to transform, be on top of ourselves in some way. Yeah, and not so be so rigid and think that things has to happen that way or that way. And we can sometimes, help ourselves to make conscious decision to change. Okay. So now we talk about adversity. So this is a big topic nowadays. So the teachings say that adversity is a perception. And the teaching says that when you feel yourself in some kind of difficult situation, the best scenario is that you can pull back into your untouched self. Okay? That is difficult during that time to remember that you are the master of your destiny. So I understand it's very easy to say it, more difficult to practice, but it's still, we need to practice. In the time of adversity, it will be difficult to resort to the wisdom of the self and try to see the rope or the true reality. Yeah, the true reality is everything is good and well, and we are perfect, and not the perception of we call the whole theory of the snake and rope. Yeah, at night, I go back to that again and again. At night, you see the snake, very scary, and you jump in fright. When the light comes and you see the true nature of the snake is the rope. So what that means? That means that we superimpose our own fear, our own idea about things upon the reality. So there is some kind of mistake that we do all the time, interpreting our lives. Okay? So we need to, when we think like this, then what happens is we equip ourselves with some kind of spiritual strength. Okay? When we start to step back and you start to see, oh, maybe, I got too involved and I got too scared and things are not the way how it is. And even though you might not understand what is it happening, but just the fact that you step back will give you more inner spiritual strength. Knowing that all is well in reality. Okay? So then at that time, we can find our courage to face the snake, because we are very terribly afraid of snake. But if you have a little doubt that maybe it's not the snake, even though I see the snake, maybe it's not the snake. Yeah. So you can step back a little bit from the fear and the projection. And you will be able to face the worst imaginary outcome. Okay? So adversity can be a good trainer. I mean, it teaches us. And what it teaches us to be strong, no matter what. Strong in ourselves. In adversity, we need to get mentally ready for what's coming. So it's not like we are catastrophizing. I mean, there's some certain mentality that people all the time think of the worst outcome of everything, yeah, out of their subconscious fear. So they think like this, but it's not that what we are talking about. We are talking about the conscious facing our situation in order for us to gain strength and courage and to be able to find the solution or the creative solution when we face the worst scenario. Okay, so it's a technique to work with your mind. So we have to face our hardships in order to do the right thing and not run away in fears. So earlier we talked about we need to visualize ourselves, have a positive visualization of what we like to become, and strengthen that image, and then you will become. So here, the opposite is we are facing our perception of adversity. We think about the worst scenario. We have negative visualization in order for us to mentally prepare for the hardships in life. Okay? So we imagine the worst outcome. So it takes some strength to be able to do that. Most of us don't want to think about this. So that's why we are paralyzed in fears, anxiety. One person one time come and tell me about his concern about, disease, or his concern about his body, what happened, and so on. So I know if I'm going to try to comfort and try to listen, that mind that is actually is imagining all kinds of things and gripped by that fear. So I don't know how, but I said like this. Well, the worst is that you die. And when I said like this, the worst outcome is that you die, you lose that body. And it's like a shock. But at the same time, there is something within the person that is refuting that scenario, or the death scenario, then he feels much better. Then he knows what to do. And sometimes we have to do this. So when you see the worst, does not mean that you are resigning your fate to it. Okay? It's the opposite. By seeing the worst, you would not bury your head in the sand and run from fear. So you have to go through that exercise with the details of a possible negative scenario. For example, now, people are very afraid of disease and virus. So you can imagine that maybe your mother is going to be sick. Maybe you will lose her. Your son may be going to be sick, and you might lose your son. Or maybe you lose your job forever and ever, and your business will bankrupt and you can never start over again. This kind of thinking. So we can do the exercise. Let's face the bad news and try to come up with a positive way to think about them. Let's get ourselves ready. Okay, so just the exercise in our mind makes us ready. Someone say, there's no way out. There's only the way through it. That means don't run away from it, but face it. So, for example, the bad news is that the confinement that you find yourself in continue. You were hoping it will be lifted, but now it continue. But the bad news. So we have to think of things to do to turn inwards, take ourselves more seriously with our yoga and meditation practice. Okay, catch up with our sadhana. Take the time to be more aware of ourselves. Normally we think that everything is okay because we are too busy externally, so we are never aware of our mind. But now we can see our mind acting up more when we are alone or when we have more time. So we become more aware that we need to really work with ourselves. And then we see how the yoga and meditation help us to ride through. Okay, there's another point of the scenario. You might feel completely overwhelmed. For example, the schools are closing for longer time. The children are with you and you feel overwhelmed parenting them. There's no babysitter. So you have to think that this is a good opportunity for you to know your kids better. You have to be involved in their teaching. You have to be creative. When you're tutoring them, you have to find yourself more stronger in order to help them to structure themselves. So you might not want to do this, but this is what you have to do. So think the most positive thing about this new task. All your life plans might change. Yeah, you want to go on vacation, you plan to study, you plan to get married, and all these things now are canceled or postponed. So many people have plans change, but you can face it. It is okay. You can think positively that you will appreciate the event much better when the time comes. It's not the worst thing. So you might have the scenario of sickness and disease. You might think, I might get sick. I might even die. But think, it is okay. Death is not the end of life anyway. If karma is the reason why I am in this body, I'm not sure that I have completed my karma. So I ask myself, am I ready to die or not? It's something that you have to face. So this prospect of death will give you the meaning to this life. Death is not the only problem. So you can imagine the worst scenario. You might be sick. You might be put on a ventilator. And when they put you on a ventilator, they have to sedate you. And you might get out of it okay or not. Yeah. But think about this. You would you be sedated. You will not be able to pray. And it is important, we said, the last thought determines the next life. It's very important for you to be as aware as possible. It's better that you pray, that you try to breathe the yogic way as much as you can, that you don't lose consciousness, and that you repeat the mantra on your lips. As you imagine the worst outcome, you might be sick. You might be sick for weeks. But it is okay. Yeah, there must be a meaning while you're alive. You're alive to fulfill some kind of mission. So at that time, you become much more careful with your time. Okay, so I'm sorry to give you this kind of scenario, but it's something that your mind don't want to think about. But we need to think about it so we can become strong. And you might imagine that people around you will get sick and maybe they will die. Yeah. Now it is said that 40 to 60% of Americans will get sick. And in the US, there will be more than a million deaths. So eventually you have to say, it's not my will, it is God's will. And then you might think the worst scenario where people, will be rioting. They would behave badly. Okay? Because, now they become more desperate. Maybe it will happen. But also, you can imagine that there will be people that will be stepping up and try to be helpful. And you might be one of this person that would step up and want to be helpful. It's a great opportunity to be helpful to others. So you might worry also that there is scarcity of stuff, of commodities. Why? Because there is a disruption in the supply chain. People don't go to work, they cannot produce things, and transportation doesn't work, so things are not the same. But you have to think that it is something short term, and that you'll be fine with simple living. Yeah, in yoga, Ayurveda, we said that we can live out of simple food like khichdi, which is mung dal and rice and some ghee. and some vegetables for a long time. So think like this, worst scenario, and the bottom line, you'll be fine. Really, the situation is we have too much food, we have too much variety of food that come from all over the world. So now when we are missing some of those specialty, then we feel like some kind of big thing that happened. But we can live a simple life. We can return to the garden. In fact, our health and our appreciation of life will increase. So you might imagine that the economy will enter recession. Consumer spending habits will change. But think positively about it. It is okay. We do not need more stuff. And this situation makes that very clear. That we can live out of little. Translation is okay? Okay. So this tendency toward, consuming is slowing down, and it's okay. So we might imagine also that we will not be able to travel the way we did. Right? The borders will close. They're already closed now. But we might have to think that we turn inward. We control our desire and our imagination, and we learn to be content with ourselves. We learn to be content with nature. Learn to be content with the people around us. And we can connect with people through internet. So it's all difficult thing to think about, but it's good to think about. You imagine that maybe there's a lot of tensions between countries, not just only between people, but between countries, people blaming each other. It can lead to some conflict. That is okay. Like people who work the relationship out. So nations, they will work their relationships out. This is a game that changes all the time. So that's an exercise to think of adversity, not running away from it, and to think that adversity is an opportunity for practice. Okay? So we need to know what kind of practice. Like earlier, we said about the flow of life, how life is a meaning. You go from one place to another. So introspect and find out what is it that you are learning. Always there is an answer from within. And it's an opportunity for practice. What kind of practice? Yeah, practice of cultivation of virtues, that's one kind. So think about this. The virtue of flexibility, the virtue of adaptation. Now all the centers are teaching yoga online. And some people find it very interesting because you can just create, you know. So here in our little center in Dalat, then they do now the teaching for free to people before they go to bed. So at 9 p.m. or so, so there is a class on breathing before you go to bed. So you put people to bed, and there are many people that sign up for that. So something interesting that we cannot do normally. So the virtue of adaptation, the virtue of strength, of courage and fortitude, we are building up. The virtue of understanding, of patience, of empathy, the virtue of learning how to detach, how to relax, no matter what. Our mind sometimes cannot relax, so stressed out, but we have to learn how to relax. The virtue of calmness, of forgiveness, of tolerance, of selflessness, the virtue of compassion and love. So there are plenty of opportunities, but also the other side is the practice of eradication of vices. Not just only seeing the virtue, but also seeing our weakness. For example, our tendency toward anger, toward control, seeing our tendency toward blaming, toward being judgmental, toward rigidity, procrastination. We know something we need to do, but we just keep procrastinating. Lack of will. I mean, we're not strong enough. So earlier we talked about the different steps of conscious transformation. So we have to do one thing at a time, one little thought at a time, and try to change little by little every day, make our resolve stronger. That will keep us very busy. Okay, and try to eradicate this tendency toward intolerance. I mean, thinking our way is the best and don't have room for other people. Our, our indulgence, our lack of self-control. Try to think about this. Think about how difficult it is for us to turn inward. How we are lacking self-awareness. We're aware of our desire, our personality, but we are not aware of our own self, which has to come when the mind is controlled. So we become aware that we cannot be in the here and now. So we need to practice to be in the here and now, and to practice little by little. This is a formula of Swami Shivananda. Little, 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 little. So don't think of a big thing, but every day there's plenty of opportunity for practice. Little by little. So we come to a conclusion that we need to keep flowing with life, with faith and fortitude, no matter what. If you practice acceptance, awareness, and detachment, you enjoy life for what it is. Life is a school. And life is a play. You become better and better at it. You can lose everything, but the main thing is you're not losing yourself. Swami Shivananda said, any amount of zero have no value. Let's say you line up 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Then you added all this together, it's still 0. But you put the number 1 before all the 0, then it becomes millions. So what is the number 1? Number 1 is your self-awareness, your self-consciousness, your own self. So think about this. And when you think about this, when you remember the self, then everything else makes sense. No matter what, no matter the situation, you're free. Okay? So that's the idea. Maybe I have time to just tell one story. One of my favorite stories in Mahabharata is the story of losing the game of dice. Yudhishthira losing a game of dice, and he's time to lose all his brothers, and then he met his wife Draupadi, and then the guard went in and tried to pull Draupadi out and threatened her, you better go, you now become our slave. If not, I'll pull you by the hair. So that's the story. And Draupadi asked a simple question. He said, did my husband, who is the one that is playing the game of dice, is my husband lost himself first and me after, or he lost myself first? So that's a question. And they answer, no, he lost himself first. So then Draupadi said, how can somebody lose anything if they have lost themselves? So that's the idea. He cannot lose her because he has lost himself before. So that's the point to say, never lose yourself, even in the worst situation, and take the opportunity in this life to flow, to become better, and know that life is always moving forward. Okay? So that's it. So that's a talk for Easter, about change, about transformation, about life, about the meaning of all our challenges.